Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a Friday. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar, Back to School Support and Resources for MyMath. My name is Sarah Shuja, and I'm a marketing manager based of Dubai office at McGraw Hill. Before we go any further, let's just check the audio connection is all right. You can hear my voice. So on the screen on the right side, you'll see a hand icon. It should appear just below your name. Please click on the icon if you can hear me. If you've attended our previous webinars, you must have known the drill by now. Thank you. Excellent. You can hear the voice. I'll give you a brief overview of the session before we move ahead. This is an implementation training for MyMath K-5. So if you teach grades K-5 and are using MyMath in the upcoming academic year, you're in the right place. You'll learn about teaching strategies and how you can redesign your classroom in the upcoming year. We've got moderators for you today just to make sure everything goes seamless. So I've got my colleagues Afsana and Ahmed. So we're in the background to make sure we support you with any questions that you have. So you can type the questions that you have for the presenter in the Q&A box. Or if you'd like to engage with the presenter, or if you have anything else that you'd like to say, you can put that in the chat box. They're both on the right side of your screen. And we have Beth Miner as our math trainer for today. Thank you, Beth, for joining us today.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. I know it's morning for you, so thank you. Beth, a bit of background about Beth before I hand over. Beth is a senior curriculum specialist at McGraw Hill and has an experience of 35 years in education. She has been a classroom teacher, a curriculum coordinator, K-12 curriculum chairman, and has held several leadership positions across her career. Beth's expertise are elementary pedagogy, curriculum and instruction, technology initiative. She's done a number of trainings nationally and internationally in UAE, Saudi Arabia, Hong Kong, and China. So thank you, Beth, once again for joining us.
Pleased to be here. I'm excited about the number of teachers who are going to join us on a Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. So thank you, everyone. It's a weekend here, and they've all joined us. I'm just going to quickly pass over to my colleague, Afsana, who will go over a few housekeeping slides, and then we can hand over to Beth to begin with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarish. Just to double check, you can hear me.
Yes.
My sound's clear, right? Perfect.
Yep.
So just as Sarish mentioned, just before we do begin, I'm just going to go over a few things just to make sure the experience for you during the webinar is as seamless as possible. So just in terms of the audio connection, if you are experiencing issues with your audio and you're connecting using your computer, I would recommend disconnecting and then calling in using your phone. Things that could impact your connection are obviously kind of high bandwidth platforms such as Netflix, YouTube, or any other kind of platforms that anyone could be using in your home as well. The session will be recorded, so if you do miss anything, we will be circulating the recording afterwards as well, and that will come via email, which will also include the certificate, and that is due to arrive in your emails within the next week or so. And lastly, there will be a Q&A at the end. So if you have any comments, questions, just general queries, feel free to use the chat box and the Q&A on the right-hand side. And myself, Sarish and Ahmed will be here to answer you. And that's all from me. I will now pass over to you, Beth.
Fabulous. Thank you. All right. Let's share my content. All righty. Can everyone see? Oh, I think there we go. Can everyone see the screen? Oops, let's wait for it to come up. There we go. The screen that I have here.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your patience. And a little housekeeping of my own. As I progress through this, because of the amount of time that we have, I want to be sure that I answer all of your questions and don't want to, wait till the end at some point. So I will stop periodically, and I'll ask you if there's anything that you would like, to ask me about something. And again, because you're muted, it will have to go in the chat box, but that's being monitored. And if you do have your print teacher's edition or student edition, I refer to certain places that you may want to go to as we're working through this time together, just so that you have a chance to process what you're seeing on the screen with your actual print materials. If you don't have those in front of you, please don't worry. The pages that I'm going to project are the pages directly from your teacher's edition and from the student book. So you see the actual pages, but I do want to acknowledge that we are going to use those print materials. We all like to know what we're going to cover, so it's a pretty ambitious agenda. I'm going to go through just a bit of the program basics at the beginning about how the program's built. The consistency piece is very important in my math. We'll go through an overview of your teacher's edition, a little bit of a lesson walk. Of course, you'll want to spend time in that after we spend this time together. I'll go through those components that are in addition to the actual teacher's edition that you'll teach from. What are the ancillary or supplemental components that you own? And then we're going to go into technology. So just want to give you a little bit of a heads up on that one. You see my email at the bottom. At any time during this year, not just in the next week or so as you're really exploring your math materials more deeply, please reach out to me. I am more than happy to jump on a webinar or Zoom with you. I'll answer any questions I can via email, but just want you to know you have support as you start using our programs at McGraw Hill. So just getting into that little piece of what is it that we're doing with my math, I want to point out the rigor and relevance that's a part of the program. I mentioned consistency. If you're sitting here as a kindergarten teacher or as a fifth grade teacher, it's okay, because this program is built consistently. The conceptual understanding, procedural skill and fluency, application, it's all a part of how the program was built on every single grade level. And the actual layout and format and instructional design of the lessons is consistent. So if you happen to be working with students who are, in a split classroom, for instance, I've worked with teachers lately where, because of remote and distance learning, if there's the option to open the classroom, not all children return. And that's an issue of maybe putting two grade levels in the same room together. The beauty of my math is that because of the way the program's laid out, you can say this is, that we're looking now at the independent practice, and everyone sees that page. That's a really big part, I think, of how we've built my math at McGraw Hill. So these three components of rigor are clearly evident in your teacher's edition. I want to be sure I'll point that out to you as well. So when we talk about conceptual understanding, we're thinking about investigate the math, model the math, and math talk, which are clearly labeled in every single lesson. When you look at procedural skill and fluency, you see the examples there of the fluency practice, the built-in homework. Yes, it's built in. You will no longer have to run to a machine and print the homework out. It is a part of the child's book, which we call an interactive text, because they interactively go into the materials every day. You have guided and independent practice, and notice multiple examples. Very often, we do have to show these students exactly what it looks like when it's at completion and a final solution. But we want to be sure that those examples show multiple strategies as well. And then in application, Math in My World, you'll see brain builders. They look like little gears that turn. This is a symbol or an icon for you to look at to know that we're building mental math fluency here. We're building on important and powerful standards. We're looking at the major part of the lesson, which, if you're pressed for time, this is the part you've got to get to. Real-world problem-solving readers in your learning station. Notice chapter projects and performance tasks. So all of these wonderful bullets you see here are a part of building that rigor in mathematics. So what do you own? Well, notice on the left, you're going to have two books for your students. And remember, we call them interactive write-in text because the pages are perforated. They're designed to be torn out. So basically, the book is kind of going to disappear as you move through it. You have two volumes, roughly, in September to January, and then to the closeout of the school year. And this is consistent, again, K-5. You have 2 volumes of your teacher's edition to complement the exact construction of volume 1 and volume 2 for your students. And then you have assessment masters. Now, these are all in print. But as we look at the technology, you're also going to see the additional support and supplemental or ancillary materials that you can access through your digital resources as well. And then let's just look at what that student edition will look like. And remember, I'm going to show you all of these, but if you're turning through any of your materials, this would be any K-5 student book, interactive text. You'll open every single chapter with a project. Now, I want you to think flexibility here. I want you to think about how you might want this to be in your classroom, or if you're going to be teaching remotely for a while, how can you still do this? So I just want to pose those kinds of questions to you as we move through our time together, because you're going to have to think about, how do I want this to work the way that I teach and in my environment? A chapter project is just what it appears to be. It's a mathematically built project that takes the students through using the math that they're learning in a real-world context. It might be opening a school store. It might be a trip to a fair, or it's something more complex, like how do I prepare to run in a triathlon, or how would I get ready to have a class party? And so it puts the theme in front of the student, and very often it will say day 1, day 2. So it tells you in advance that this is not something you can do, in a single class period. And it really throws the math over to the students and say, so how would you do this? So think about all those skills you're using to do something like this. Reasoning skills, problem-solving skills, those kinds of things, in addition to the actual math. You see, am I ready? It's exactly what it says. Are they ready to go into this chapter? It's a little diagnostic. It's 1 page. It's in the child's interactive text, or you can assign it to them to take digitally. And it kind of gives you a heads up. It's about 10 problems. And it just gives you a heads up on if they're ready for the math that they're going to get. Now, you don't expect every child to get every single one of them correct, but it tells you that this is maybe a stumbling block, or this might be a spot where a child would benefit from some additional work or practice. You see 2 kinds of math words here, My Math Words and vocabulary cards. They're both, again, in the child's interactive text, which you see on the left. The My Math Words are words they've already seen, and they'll be coming back up in this chapter study. The vocabulary cards are new math words they're going to see, maybe if not for the first time, they're going to see them with some intensity. So we're going to put them in front of the students before we start the chapter. Again, I'm going to give you something to think about. These are little paper cards. They have the words on them. They have definitions. They have examples. They see pictures. Where can I put these? What do you want to do with them? So I used zipper baggies, and the students would cut the cards out and then put them in the baggie. Then as we were moving through the chapter, we would occasionally stop, maybe get in a partnership, and practice the words together. Again, that's up to you. I want to emphasize flexibility here and how you want students to use those in your classroom or remotely. And then you have something called a foldable. Some of you all might be familiar with Dinah Zeit. She's one of our authors, and she is the mastermind behind foldables. And they're exactly what you would think they'd be. You fold them. They're pieces of paper that are folded. But they might make a waterfall book, or they may make a foldable book of some sort. It is a hands-on tool that students use to reinforce the concepts in the mathematics. So they could go back to this as a study tool. They could take it home after they've made it and show it to their parents and say, this is the math that I'm doing in my classroom. Students love them. They love folding the paper, just like they would enjoy, I'll give origami as an example, but not nearly that difficult or multi-step. These are in the child's interactive text. They pull them out and they follow the directions to fold it. Again, think, how will I use this? How will I store it? Or will I send it home great communicator with your parents in letting them know what's happening in that classroom. And then notice I have 3 more. So the first 5 little dots are as you start the chapter. The last 3 are as you finish the chapter. You're going to have a chapter review, a chance to go back, just sort of revisit the concepts that have been taught, and that includes vocabulary, and get them ready for the assessment. The second one, reflect, is an assessment, but it's a different kind of assessment. There are tests that are in your assessment masters, so I don't want you to think you don't have an actual test to give. But the reflect is in the child's interactive text, and it's an opportunity to ask the student to be reflective about what he or she has learned. What did we do in here? What was the math that you learned? What do you think you know the best? And it's a really unique assessment opportunity, but one that you're going to think about the amount of time and explanation students might need. And then finally, you have that performance test. So think about applying the mathematics, the application part of rigor. This is where we pose a task, very open-ended, and then ask the students to try to solve it. What would you do to solve this problem? And you may get, if you have 20 students, you may get 20 responses, that could all approach it just a little bit differently. So this is what the students have in their interactive text at their fingertips. So think about how all these things are going to work together as we look at what the actual lessons are going to look like as well. I want to point this out to you, and again, if you have your teacher's edition or your student book in front of you, it's on Roman numeral page 6 in every single grade level. This is just a huge 5,000-foot view from the air of what a single year is going to look like, your whole year. So this is grade 4, and when you look at it, you can see that each of the strands of math or domains are separated out by chapter. So in grade 4, I can see that the major emphasis of grade 4 is that very first green domain, number and operation to base 10. Notice there are 6 chapters devoted to just this, because that is where the power standards or those major shifts in learning occur in 4th grade. Notice that you're given about the amount of time you would want to devote to this chapter. So you have a pacing guideline here that will take you right through your whole year. And remember, these are just suggestions. You know your students and you know what they need. So if you need to stay longer in the chapter or if you need to move out a bit more quickly, that is sincerely a decision that you will make. Notice that in addition to number and operations in base 10, number and operations with fraction and measurement and data have a significant number of chapters as well. So what you begin to see is how all this ties together, that those first 6 chapters are laying a very, very firm foundation so that as you move into number and operations and fractions, the students are ready for the complexity of that kind of work. So a lot of thought went into the sequencing of the chapters, and a lot of thought went into the content that they would learn to build very, very strong foundational skills. So if you don't have, if you don't have your book in front of you, you might want to jot down a note to look at Roman numeral page 6, because it is consistent across all grade levels. And I want you to be sure that if you have any questions about this, go ahead and put it in the chat box. I'm going to stop in a minute. We'll look and see if we have any questions we'll want to answer. So it's organized in every grade level the exact same way. Now, this is what the students see. This is their table of contents. The very first thing I want you to notice is in the top right corner, essential question. Every single chapter has an essential question. It is consistent through the whole chapter. Every single lesson is built around this question. So notice, how does place value help represent the value of numbers? All work in this chapter is building towards being able to answer that question. So as you are working and as the students are working, this is what we're working for, is to be able to answer that question. Now, notice as we progress through the chapter that the lessons are colored, and that's a heads up to you and to the student on what kind of lesson it is. You'll notice at the top in blue it says Getting Started. Every chapter is going to start with those things I've already shown you, the project, the Am I Ready little diagnostic, the math words, the vocab cards, the folders. So every chapter will start that way. Then we move into the actual lessons. And you'll notice there are blue lessons, there's a red one, there's a green one. The blue lessons I'll show you in just a second. These are concept lessons, but for the purpose of how we teach school, let's call it a regular lesson. And it's that kind of lesson that you could do in a single math period. And it's built consistently across, again, not just your grade level, but every grade level. Notice the red lesson, Check My Progress. If it's red, it's assessment. I'll say it again. If it's red, it's assessment. Then you'll see a green lesson. And a green lesson focuses on developing problem-solving strategies. Now, you're going to have problem-solving in every lesson, but we're going to stop in a lesson and actually teach a strategy for students to learn, like guess and check, or the 4 steps for solving a word problem, those kinds of things. And then you're going to wrap it up. So look at just give you a second and just look at that page. You're going to get started. You have lessons with built-in homework, and then wrap it up. Now, this is a pretty short chapter, but there are other chapters that are as long as 13 and 14 lessons. But it's because of, again, what kinds of concepts and skills that you're teaching. Notice at the bottom of the student page that you're going to see lots of things like this. There are hints and suggestions for the students. I'm going to, lack of a better word, I'm going to call that a tile. And it looks like this. It's almost like a playing card. These little tiles appear throughout the student materials. They are references to your digital resources. And it's reminding the students that they can go online and watch a video, whether it's a video that opens the chapter and introduces a theme, or if it's a help video that will remind them how to do the mathematics, like a little tutorial. But you will see those embedded in the student materials. And I'll refer to those periodically just to remind you that the students constantly have digital tools that support them, whether they're sitting in your classroom or if they're sitting at home at a kitchen table, working remotely or doing their homework or any of those things. And then again, another thing is when you see that little green bar, like look at the chapter project and the performance task, there are the little gears that I was telling you about. Those refer to these as brain builders. This is where we're really digging in deep. We're digging in on rigor. That those 3 components of rigor: the conceptual understanding, the procedural skill and fluency, and application. So when you see those, you know that rigor is getting a really, really hard hit. So this is what the students see. And if you have your student book or even your teacher's edition as well, you can look at a whole chapter like this, and it sort of takes you on a roadmap through what you're going to teach. So 3 parts, every chapter, every grade. Okay? Everything goes back to the essential question. All instruction is going around, can we get these students to answer that? Now that was the student table of contents, but look at what you get. A lot of stuff on this screen. Again, if you have your teacher's edition, you can open to any chapter, and this is your table of contents. Now, Therese told you that I taught school for a very long time, and I know how we are in the classroom. We're teaching, we are on a roll, and things are going well, and the pacing is good, so you hit a new chapter, and you get to these pages. It's about 10 or 12 pages at the front of every chapter. And you go flip, 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 and you go to the next lesson and you keep going. And I know that's how we work. But if you would just stop and just take an hour of your time and flip through these pages, it will give you so much information about what you're going to do and how to get ready and what tools that you have at your fingertips. So when I hear a teacher say to me, oh, I had to go online and find a video, or I was looking for something on YouTube. I think, did you know what you owned? Because we already had that for you. So I would just hate to see you spend your time like that when there's a tool that you've built. So we're going to look at just a tiny bit of this, and then I'm going to ask you on your own, just a little homework assignment, to look at this page on your own and just spend a minute digesting what it gives you. First of all, in the blue box in the upper left, you have your pacing. Now, if you're going to end up teaching remotely, if that's going to be something that is going to, come alive for you, think about how your pacing may alter a bit. Because I think, as an experienced educator, that with, distance learning or remote learning, whatever we want to call it, it might take me a little bit longer to do some of these things. Plus, I'm going to think in my head, something that was designed to be a partnership, how can I still do that with my students when they're at home alone? So these are the things that might alter your suggested pacing. You see across the top, that's the lesson number in the chapter. And then as you go down the left, you see the emphasis on vocab and materials. And I want to point out, you see, it looks like two little hands. That indicates that it's a hands-on activity. So I want to go back to that concept of remote learning. If your students were supposed to hold something or a concrete object, how can you still do something like that? What suggestion might you make, for instance, to parents? Because they may not have those yellow counters at home that are in your classroom. But we can suggest coins or, uncooked macaroni or beans. I mean, there are all kinds of things that we can do to make sure they still have this chance to touch a concrete object that's going to help the concept come alive. You'll notice the green. It says lesson presentation, and I want to remind you right now, we have built for you lesson presentations of the entire lesson and every lesson. Whether it's a regular lesson or problem solving, we've built a full presentation for you. So again, I'm going to go back to remote learning. If you end up having to do remote learning, or if you know already that this is what you're going to do, you have a full presentation which is customizable. You can change it and make it your own. That is already built. I'm going to show you that in technology. There's red, and you already know that red means assessment. So you can glance across and see all the assessments that you're going to have in a single chapter. I just invite you to spend some time in this. And then in the upper right corner, there are those little tiles. It's just a reminder that online, these are the resources students can touch and use as well as you as you're teaching this lesson. So I think when we think about remote learning, these might become some very important pages. This is another page that, again, I can't tell you how important it is. It's probably my favorite, two-page spread in the whole beginning of the chapter materials. It's called What's the Math in the Chapter? It pretty much is saying, hey, what am I teaching? Notice at the top, you have an intersection of your content and those mathematical practices. We're going to show you how they interlap. And then you're going to notice it says, what should my students already know? So if you're coming into, for instance, this is a third grade, this is a fourth grade page, I apologize. It's telling me what they did in third that was a prerequisite skill. This is the prior knowledge they should use to be successful with this. What are they going to understand, and what should they be able to do in this chapter? And notice the beautiful graphic there. I'm showing you exactly what it's going to look like. They're going to, in fourth grade, they're going to have to use a place value chart. They have to read, write multi-digit numbers. And I'm seeing exactly how it's going to play out. And then, what will my students do next? So after this chapter, I see what's going to happen in my fourth grade year. And then look, I see how this transitions into the next grade level. So for me, this is a Google map. This is how I might have used a GPS system. This maps out my map through an entire chapter. So just a big heads up on how you could use these two pages to get ready to teach, is because you're going to be showing them, this is, you're going to be, as you plan plan, you're going to know exactly what you'll be showing them, but what they needed to know to be successful in it and how they'll use it next. And in your teacher's edition, we're going to make connections for you. You probably have something called a learning station. It's a folded, very compact set of materials that can build centers and stations for you. You can use them in small groups, and everything is accessible online for the students. So you see on the left, those real-world problem-solving readers. How could I use these? They're in 3 levels. They're in approaching, on level, and beyond level. This is about connecting literacy with mathematics. It lets you make those natural connections from what they read to how it's applied in math. And the beauty of this page is, you'll notice down here on the right, it shows My Learning Station. It shows you exactly what to pull out, what game to use, what problem-solving card, and exactly which one would apply to the math in this chapter. So it helps you build your center or your station. It helps you use those materials, more efficiently. And you notice on the right, it says getting ready. In every single chapter, you're going to have a theme. For instance, in chapter 1 of the 4th grade, it's called A Great Outdoors. The idea behind that, of course, is making real-world connections. You know how important that is. But it also is about helping the students see how the math works beyond the walls of the classroom. And I think with this remote teaching, this is probably one of the most important things that we're going to do, is help them see that, because they may not actually physically be in the room with us to help make those connections. So I'm going to have to give them examples so they can see it, away from the actual instruction. Every single chapter is built on theme. Some of them, the students, it captivates their imagination. In others, maybe not so much. It's not something that they're familiar with. But every single chapter opens with a short video, about 2 minutes, and it talks to them about the theme. So, you'll want to think about building that in. And again, I want to mention remote learning, because they can watch that video whether they're in the room with you or whether they're at home. And then, of course, I mentioned that learning station and the connections to all these wonderful tools that you have. It also opens the door to introducing the project and what students can do to get ready to use the project. And I'm going to, again, put it back in your court with flexibility. Do you want to do this in 2 days? You want to do it at the end of the chapter? Do you want to stop and maybe do it halfway through? You've got lots of flexibility. I think the idea is, think about how you could make this project work for you. And so in addition to all these wonderful learning station tools, you'll notice that you have graphic novels, you have games, and you're also going to have a few manipulatives like spinners, dice, and cards. And you can connect these to doing the project as well. Notice on this particular project, I want to point out to you, it does have day 1, day 2. So as you're pacing and planning throughout the chapter, we need to think about the amount of time you want to dedicate to this. And notice this is a flight school contest. And as you know, with most 4th graders, they're fascinated by flying. How does the plane even stay in the air? So it gives them a lot of things to also research. And you can make connections to any research skills that you're trying to get the students to learn at that particular grade level. And then, of course, your red, you're going to see your diagnostic assessment. You have lots of assessment in addition to the Am I Ready at the start of the chapter. And I get the opportunity to do this in the interactive text. They simply tear it out. Or if you want to assign it online, you can do that, and it will auto-score. You also see here the math words and the vocabulary cards I've already introduced to you. Remember, they're in the text. The students simply pull them out and, cut them up. And then I want to move from all those things that I've just shown you to how they look with regard to an actual lesson. So I just want to stop a second right there, let you just kind of process what you just heard about, all these resources already. We haven't even taught a lesson yet, but you have all these tools. And so you need to begin to think about, how am I going to manage these in the classroom or out? What am I going to do with those cards? How am I going to put those games out? Or how can I get my students to play these games if they're not in the room with me? So just want to go ahead and toss that out at you right now. think about any questions that you might have around that. And then, my colleagues at McGraw Hill, if there's something you want to read to me, I don't have the chat box open. I'm happy to answer any questions right now.
Thanks, Pat. We haven't received any questions from the participants. I guess we're following along really well.
Okie doke.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll go ahead and move on.
Yes, but if you have any questions for Beth so far, anything, please do let us know in the Q&A box or the chat box, and we can address it then.
Great.
Thank you.
So, again, if you have your print materials in front of you, let's look at a regular lesson. Look at the 6 points I've drawn out for you. You're going to get what we call Math in My World, guided practice, independent practice, problem solving. You'll notice the brain builders and homework. Love the format, love the design, love the consistency. I hope you do too. Notice on the left, for those of you without your print materials in front of you, this is actually pulled out from the book, so you see an actual page. Notice the Math in My World, and I want to point out, there they are, the little tiles. And because this is the student book, they know exactly which of these they can go to online for help. Here's my essential question. They see it, you see it. The extra part is the parents see it. So parents always know what you're working for. Notice you have example one way, another way. And again, I'm going to go back to parents on this. For some parents, they were taught one way to do something. That's it. So this is a little different for them. And they might say, oh, no, do it like this. And we understand that as educators, that this may be asking them to move out of their comfort zone a little bit. But we know in today's math world, we have to show as students alternatives. They have to look at things in more than one procedure or one way that it was done. And that is a big part of math right now, is the alternative strategy. So we're looking at the example. And then here's one way to do it using a model. Here's another way to do it using adding the numerators and keeping the denominator. So one of those is very open-ended, the other more procedural. Again, letting our students see both ways is big. And then as we move over into guided practice, notice there is a tutor button right here. So the tutor, for students who are struggling with which one or which works for me, which one do I understand the best, they can go to the tutor and it will do the 2 ways for them over again and let them absorb it a little bit more. We're going to do another example and let the students attempt to apply a strategy. What I want to point out too is all along the way in the student interactive text, they have what we call helpful hints, reminding them of a step or a procedure. And notice math talk. Again, another way that we want to integrate the opportunity for students to talk about what they're learning. Use those math words that we're encouraging through the vocabulary card. So you have Math in My World, moving into guided math practice, and then ultimately into independent practice. And then the beauty of this is, as they move into the independent piece, they can look back at the guided practice to remind them of the steps and to remind them of how to apply the math they're learning. Problem solving, every single lesson. Always going to put problem solving out there in front of the student. And then your brain builders. And we talked a little bit about this. This is where you're going to see the heavy emphasis on those math practices, and also we're going to see a heavy emphasis on that rigor. And I want you to notice right here at the bottom, as a big old question mark, we're asking them, what do you know so far about answering this essential question? What's working for you so far? So we're kind of getting a little heads up on, are they getting the math concepts they're ultimately going to need to be able to answer that essential question? There's your homework, right there in the book. And I told you how many years I taught, so you know I made a lot of rush trips up to the machine to print the homework because I didn't have it ready for that lesson. So this to me was just, a beautiful feature. The students simply pull it out and take it home. And again, if you're working remotely, this homework comes up in the lesson. The students can log in to the Student Center and get it. They can complete it online. They can submit it to you. They can print it out and work on it in hard copy, bring it to the building. You have so many options with your digital tools. Notice at the bottom that there is a homework helper. And there's the little tile called eHelp. Again, they're at home, they're working independently, and they hit a little bit of a roadblock. They can go to the eHelp. It will remind them of how to do the math. And some of the eHelp, we have the most wonderful tutors. Their voice is always very calm and very level. They never get frustrated. They're happy to tell you 10 times how to do it over and over again. So I find parents absolutely love this. I wanted to be sure that you were reminded that you have all these tools from home as well. That is a regular lesson. Consistent, built across the grade levels the same way, perforated pages come out of the interactive text, can be done online. And if you're teaching remotely, you can actually display those actual pages so that as students go back to do it in their online resources, it looks exactly like what your pages look like as you were doing your instruction. Now let's stop a second and move on to the problem-solving lesson. Every grade level, you're going to have one in every chapter. Notice that the structure of the lesson alters a little bit. You have learn, practice, apply, review, and it all focuses on a problem-solving strategy you want to teach the students. And of course, you always have your homework. This is how it's built, this is how it looks, and this is how we're going to move through every problem-solving lesson. Notice the beautiful graphics, so that as students are understanding what problem-solving is, they're actually getting beautiful pictures, beautiful graphics that show them how the strategy evolves into something that they can go, store away and go to and pull out later as a means of solving a problem. And I'll use the example, teachers in 4 and 5, of multi-step word problems. Students struggle with these. Like, how do I tackle it? What do I do? There are a lot of numbers in here. Which ones do I use? When they have a problem-solving strategy, this one is to determine reasonable answers. This takes them through the steps of how to do that. So think about the problem-solving strategies and all the ways that these lessons are going to help you really get those embedded into student learning. I mentioned the red. Red is always check my progress. Red is always assess. So as you're working through a chapter, especially a long chapter, you might hit one of these about halfway through. So this is grade K. I'm working through a chapter, and it might say have 10 lessons. I might hit this after lesson 5. It's not always positioned there, but it's a place where you can sort of stop and say, okay, are they getting it? Do I need to slow down? Do I need to speed up? So it's just what it says it is. It checks your progress to that point, so that as you move towards the conclusion of the chapter, you might know who needs extra help, who needs differentiation, who can I speed up with, what can I pull out of my learning station to reinforce this. So it's a good stop check. And then, of course, as you look to the end of the chapter, you're always going to get a review. Now, I'm going to put it in your court again. I'm going to go back to flexibility. You want to do this together? You want to assign it? Would you like for them to work collaboratively on it? I mean, there's so many ways that you can put this in front of the students. Notice it has a vocabulary check, and then it has a concept check, and we have emphasis on the brain builders. So you're hitting it all. You're making sure that everybody is moving with you on how these concepts and skills work. Now, after you do this review, as an experienced educator, I would take a peek at them at night, and then the next day I might pull small groups. And if I see that someone struggled with adding fractions, then I might pull that small group together. I might put another group in the learning station. I might have another group playing games. I mean, there's so many ways that you can use what you learn from them doing the review before you actually give them the chapter assessment. And I mentioned the reflect. Very different kind of assessment. When you look at this, you see in this particular reflect, the emphasis in every grade level will always be the essential question. But in this one, and they can all be different, it's asking them to use a graphic organizer to answer the question. So how can equivalent fractions help me add and subtract fractions? Write an example of that. Show me a real-world example when that would happen. What vocabulary can I use to answer this? And then can I do this using estimation? So it kind of pulls out all kinds of components of what they learned in the chapter, and then at the bottom, write the answer to the essential question. It is a wonderful learning tool for you as the classroom teacher. This is a great way to, are they absorbing the vocabulary? Are they understanding the concepts? Do they really know how equivalent fractions help them? Not just with the addition and subtraction, but how equivalent fractions work in their world. So it's a really good example of what Reflect will do in terms of helping you understand what your students know. Now, I'm going to show you in your assessment masters that you have actual chapter tests that can be scored and graded. This one gives you, the Reflect gives you a great deal of information. And then you have a performance task. And again, I'm just reminding you that you may need to take more than one day to answer. You may want to start it before you get to the end of the chapter and then finish it after the chapter has concluded. In this one, you're doing a triathlon training. It has 3 parts, A, B, and C. So you could do part A as you approach the end of the chapter. Part B might be on the same day you give the Reflect. And part C, you can even assign them to do at home. Just all kinds of ways to do it. But notice that this performance task is actually a brain builder. It actually is using the 3 components of rigor to do this. So just want to put all of those assessments in front of you to give you an idea of what a whole chapter looks like and then how you walk out of the chapter. And again, I'm going to stop a second and let you type in anything you want and ask me any questions you want before we move on a little bit. And I want to be sure that we hit a digital in time for you to see the Teacher Center and the Student Center. Are we okay, Sharice?
We've got a few questions coming in.
Okay.
Should I go on?
Yeah.
Okay, so how many months does the 2 books need? How many months do the 2 books need, in your opinion?
I think, and again, I appreciate that you added in your opinion. Every classroom is different, so of course everyone could potentially move at a different speed or rate. But the program is designed to last about 170 days. Each of those regular lessons is between 45 minutes and an hour. But you know your students, and they may be the occasional lesson you're going to need to spend 2 days on it. And you have a little bit of built-in time to allow you to spend, more than 1 day on a lesson. You don't want to spend 2 days on every lesson. You're just, well, first of all, as you get deeper into the program, you're going to speed up anyway because the foundational skills are there. But you have enough time to finish both volumes in a single year.
Great. There's another very nice question from Sasan. It says, it's a comment, thank you for your time. We have an issue in Lebanon since we have stopped schools in March. We lacked half a year. So how can we start and boost our students and get the best from them during revision? Any tips you have, please? We're sending them videos during the quarantine, not Zooming.
This is a problem we're facing worldwide. I mean, I'm here in the United States. We stopped school in March as well. It took a while, I would say, for most districts, regardless of what region of the United States you're in, to figure out how to get the Zoom thing going. So I think we're all facing the same thing: is what will they come in with? What will we do with what they don't know? I think personally, I mean, this is again just a personal thing, I would start your current grade level. I just don't think any of us can go backwards, teach half a year of one grade, and then be expected to teach a whole year of another grade. I think what's going to happen with some of the differentiation I'm going to show you right now is you have some fabulous differentiation resources that you can use to pull in some of the concepts and skills that they're definitively going to be weak. They're just going to be weak. But I think that some of the tools and resources you have are going to let you do that. My Math also has so many videos on concepts that students can watch. You can assign them away from class time. You can assign them as homework, and students can watch those to have a little bit of a leg up on what you're going to try to teach them. So that's just my personal opinion. I think we're all in the same boat. But I think as you look at some of these resources, you're going to feel a little bit better about what you have with regard to let's play catch up. And I think that's what we're all going to be doing, is playing catch up in September. I hope that answered it. I don't think it did.
No, that's true, Beth, because I think that's the phenomena that's worldwide. If we're all in the same book anyway, and I'm sure the parents understand this, the teachers understand it, and I think the important bit is we don't need to make this a very pressurized situation. I know we will be playing catch up, but it's the most you can do, whatever you can do. It's a pandemic situation, so it's all right.
Right, and I do believe that our leadership is going to help us with this. I'm sure the leadership, regardless of where you are, is looking at the phenomenon and going, this is how we're going to handle it. So these are the kinds of things I think we're all embracing, and I'm sympathetic, but I do think that McGraw Hill is giving us a lot of tools to use. I really do.
100%. I'm just going to quickly ask you 2 more questions, if that's okay, and we can move on. Okay, thank you. Can you guide, please, on how students can go to eHelp?
Sure, I'm going to show you that. Right.
Okay.
We're going to go through a few more slides, and then we're going to move over to technology, and I'll show you that.
And the last one is, so the book is giving examples to beyond level 2?
The book is giving examples in on-level work. What they're actually doing in the guided practice in particular is you'll get an example, and a portion of it will already be filled in. So, for instance, I'll just give the example of adding mixed fractions. It may show them how to change the denominator, those kinds of things. It doesn't answer the problem for them. It more or less guides them through what the steps would be. But I'm going to show you in differentiation that you are going to have beyond level opportunity for those students who know those skills and where you can go and get it. So we all have some high flyers, and we want to keep them engaged and challenged. So you'll have that.
Thank you. I'll let you continue now. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you. And thank you for the good question.
Thank you, everyone.
You see Fluency Practice. This is in each chapter as appropriate. And what I mean by that is you won't see it in every chapter, but you'll see it where the authors feel it's the most appropriate. So for you, this is for you. Notice you have a 5-part lesson design. Notice the gear. Those are your opportunity, of course, to feel rigor. Notice all the additional presentation opportunity you have here. We're going to give you lots and lots of information on the lesson. So now that I know that you're so worried about what's been happening because you weren't with your students from March, this is going to give you a lot of information on how to tackle some of these complex concepts and skills. So notice in the launch, okay, you have the 3 parts of rigor, and you have your presentation at the top of your page. So you can see what your digital presentation looks like. As you move through a lesson, notice number 2 is called Build. And again, we're going to point out in the presentation what slides are appropriate for the build. Notice the hands on Model the Math. And then, of course, what you want to be sure that you understand is in the build, you're going to have Explore, Model, and notice here, the teacher who asked the question, here's your extension if you feel that some students would benefit from that. So as you move through your lesson, notice your presentation is always at the top. And notice on the page, you actually see the student book at the bottom of the page. So there's no reason for you to have 2 things open at once. When I get to part 4 of the lesson, it's called Apply. And you see on the right side of the screen, you're going to have differentiation. So I'm thinking about those students not being with you since March. You have approaching level, and you may use this a lot, on level and beyond level. So in every lesson, you're going to have 3 differentiation options, and every one of them could be a hands-on activity. And notice that in the, excuse me, I went too fast. Notice that it suggests about the amount of time that you might spend doing this. At the bottom of the differentiation page, there's an emphasis on ELL. Now, I'm an experienced educator, and what this says to me is, this supports my ELL learner, but guess what? I can use these activities with any child. Why? Because they're all learning the language of mathematics. So if you look at this, you really have 6 differentiations on this page. And then after your differentiation, wrap it up. Here's your homework. And I want to point out that little red check mark. Even your homework has assessment opportunities on it. So again, this is your lesson design. I know I went quickly, but I wanted you to just see that what we saw in the student book is complemented by this fabulous information that you have, including formative assessments built in. And I want to kind of go back to this one a little bit because it's so important. When I look at differentiated instruction, very often you'll also have a handout. Again, this can be done online that would be used with each of these. Notice on approaching level, it's identified as tier 2. And on level, it's identified as tier 1. So when I look at my beyond level, I know that it is an extension activity. So again, these are the kinds of things that you're going to be able to do with any student, even though I know you haven't seen them since March, to perhaps play that catch-up game we just talked about. In English language learner support, emerging, expanding, bridging, again, regardless of whether they're an English language learner or simply a student who would benefit from using one of these strategies to understand the language of the mathematics. I put some page numbers at the bottom if you have your teacher's edition. This is a problem-solving lesson. You know that that you're going to have one per chapter, and it is going to follow this particular format and design. But just like your regular lesson, we're going to give you a ton of information on how to deliver this, including a full presentation. So you're going to launch it, you're going to move into build, and from there you'll go into practice, and then you'll move into apply. Here's your differentiation, just like a regular lesson, and you'll wrap it up. So even though it's a little bit different, it still has that 5-part lesson design you've been teaching. And in addition to you liking the consistency, the students really like it. Notice the red check mark. We're going to build in these assessments for you. But also in your teacher's edition, at the end of a chapter, you're going to do the concept check in your review, and we're also going to remember to do that reflect. And in your assessment masters, you have a multitude of tests. Now, these are in print. I invite you to use those, but you can do these online, where we're moving right now. You have vocabulary assessments, you have oral assessments, and these are the kinds of, excuse me, I'm going to go back for a second. These are the kinds of assessments you might not give everybody. You might just pull these out for a few students. You might have that student who needs to do the test orally because they cannot read the words. Their reading fluency level affects their ability to do the assessment. But typically, we just have a few students with that. These are the kinds of things we just covered. I want you to take a second, read this to yourself, and I'm going to move on, but I don't want to move on unless if you feel like you have anything that you need to tackle right now, because I want to get us into digital. I'm going to take that as okay. This is the learning station I've already mentioned. It's a beautiful thing. You may or may not have it. Of course, it depends on what your school has purchased, but it does, in your teacher's edition, it does tell you which tools to use from here that are a part of the concepts of the chapter. I mentioned the real-world problem-solving readers. You have 3 levels, which means everyone can read the same book, or a small group can read the same book, but at different fluency levels. And then the games. Don't forget, if you can't play the games in person because you're working remotely, you have the games digitally. I'm going to really stop a second and emphasize gameplay. I love it. I know sometimes it's difficult to manage, but gameplay is a fabulous tool for not just developing fluency, it is a fabulous tool for reasoning, problem solving, strategy development, and most importantly, articulating what they know, using the vocabulary and explaining it and talking about how they played the game. So when a game comes up, please try to play it, and anytime you can reinforce playing them in a lesson, it's important. These are fabulous activity cards focusing around problem solving, and also the activity cards help you set up centers and stations. All of this is online. And then, of course, you have problem solving connecting other content areas, in this case, science. So these are typically 3-5, I will share with you. So just an idea of how you can make math come alive in other content areas. So as we move over to assessment, you have the assessment masters, and I want to point out that you have chapter level performance tasks. In addition to the performance task in your chapter, these are extras. These are not the same ones as in your student book. So if you want to give more of those, we gave them to you. You have chapter tests, they're leveled, so you can give different levels. You can give the same test, but level it with different students. You have benchmark tests. These are I want to say like once every 9 weeks. So they're fabulous to go back and really benchmark what they've learned in a small amount of time. You have what we call a 20-week countdown. This says state test. For you, it's any high-stakes test you would give. 20 weeks out from the test, you can start doing these. It helps students understand how to answer multiple choice, how to answer fill in the blank, true, false, short essay, all those kinds of questions that are in high-stakes tests. So you'll want to think about how you want to use those. And then the interactive guide lets you scaffold instruction, build more academic language, do guided writing in mathematics. These are all online. So let's go online now. And I think it's a great time for us to be able to ask any questions before I move over. I'm sorry, somebody desperately wants me to buy something from me.
We've got one question.
Sure, go right ahead.
I think I don't quite understand what this question means, but it says, should we follow the days you put?
I think, to me, what that means is, should I follow the format and design in the suggested number of days per chapter? I think it's always a good idea to take suggestions like that, but I also think that we have to be aware of what our students can do. So if it's suggested that I'm changing over, so I got to remember where it is. I'm so sorry. So if we want to be sure that our students are really grasping what we've learned, then we need to make sure we're moving at a pace that is good for them. So if a chapter says 9 days, and you want to spend more days, you go right ahead. I think you're the one who really knows what the students would be capable of. So I would really suggest that you would try to stay within the guidelines. We've worked hard to try to make that something that works for you, but I don't want to preempt your ability to know what your students can do. You have a little bit of lag time built in there, so I want you to use what works. I apologize. My Connect Ed had timed out.
Thank you, Beth. I hope that answers your question. And we can see your screen. Yes.
Good. Okay. I'm logging in to MyDot, which is what we call your ability to access Connect Ed. And I'm going to scroll down because I have a big website. So I have a lot of access to a lot of things. Your district will give you your login, and they may very well already have your material loaded. But I'm going to go to the Teacher's Edition for 2nd grade. And I'm going to show you everything that you have. And first of all, I want you to notice what it looks like when I log in. I'm in the Teacher Edition, and I'm in 2nd grade. So the first thing I want you to see is that this one has opened in Chapter 3. but wherever it opens is probably going to be where your planner is. I'm going to call this right here. All right, I'm hoping everybody can see. I'm going to go too fast. If I start going fast, type in the chat box because I want to show you so much. We call this the hamburger menu. At McGraw Hill, we really like food, so we associate many of the things with food. This is our hamburger menu. When I click on it, here is everything you own right here. This is your easy one-stop shop for everything in your grade book. Right? So I can get to anything here, or if I just click away from that, okay, I can go here and click on it, and it's going to open. It'll take a second. It's going to open every chapter in every lesson. So by clicking here, I can just go to chapter 3, chapter 2, whatever I want to go to. So I could go to chapter 3, lesson 1, chapter 4, lesson 4. So how you want to access your materials, completely up to you, what works for you. But the first thing I want to point out is this. When I clicked on this, the very first thing is program resources and updates. I want to show you here that everything I've talked about for the past hour and 10 minutes is right here. So if you kind of go, golly, she's just telling me so much stuff, go back here. Here are quick start guides. This is a quick 2-minute video of how to access everything I've just talked about. So if you want to go back and refresh and review what we talked about, there you go. Here's a getting started, same thing. How do I just start to teach my math? A lot of suggestions about pacing. Here's a letter to the parents. So again, look at what the program is offering you. Work math. So that if you want them to play a game, if you want them to have a 4-space place value map right here. Learning Station. The Learning Station teacher guide, how to use the Learning Station. Reteaching workbooks, enrichment workbooks. Everything that we could think of that you might want to touch is going to be right here in the very first program resource. So, but let's go ahead and just click on, I'm going to do chapter 1, okay? And when I click on that, all my lessons pop up. There's your Am I Ready? That's that little diagnostic. There are my math words. Let's go to chapter 1, lesson 1. I'll just click on the lesson. And the first thing I want you to notice is there's the chapter video. So if you're working with your students in the classroom, you can do it from here. Second grade teachers, notice this one is Let's Find Some Animals. Or when I show you the Student Center, you can see the students get the very same video. You can simply ask them to watch it. Right? We're not going to take the time, if you don't mind, right now not to watch that. So I want you to notice I'm in chapter 1, lesson 1. This is called the carousel. See the these are the little tiles that match those tiles that we saw in the student book. Okay? So again, and if I hover over it, this is more would be additional resources. There are all the worksheets. There's your eHelp. Someone asked, how do I get to eHelp? Right there. That's one way to get to it. Here's all the assessments in this lesson. These are my e-tools. I pointed out that you had those hands on your teacher's edition that showed you how to model the math. Well, if you're in the classroom and you can pass out yellow counters, that's great. But if you're not there and you're teaching remotely, these are all of the virtual manipulatives that you use. These are the ones that the students use as well. So showing them how to get to it is going to be crucial because they need to know how to get to those things. So these are the resources in the carousel. These also pop up in the student book. Here's the student book right there. So if I click on that, it will always, now notice I'm in the teacher center, but this shows me the student book. So at any time, whether I'm working with the students in the classroom or if the students are working remotely, I can open the ebook and show them the actual page so that they can use it to write in, they can use it to get to eHelp. It's all those things that let you teach remotely by using exact materials that replicate what the students have. It's opening. right this second. Notice these little arrows. That's going to move you through the ebook. Or watch this. I can go, again, hamburger menu. I can click on that, and it lets me go to the table of contents. There we go. Right? And in the table of contents, it lets me move anywhere in the book. What's the beauty of this is, notice right here, here's your foldable. See how easy that is? They just tear it out. We're starting a chapter, essential question. All of these things down here are live links. If they need e-help, click on it. And in the ebook, it's going to bring up the e-help that they need for that page. It is specific to the lesson. So they don't have to hunt for it, and they don't have to go looking for it. Technology is a little slow today. So I'm in the Teacher Center, and it's taking me over to this video on how to do addition properties. If I click on the gear, let me scroll down just a second. All right. If I go to the gear right here, it's showing me I can do 5 things. I can open it, which I can open it for me. I can open it for the students. I can assign this, which means I can push this over to my students so that when they open and log in, they see that they should watch this. I can make a little note, watch the addition properties video. If you're using Google Classroom, you can share it there so that it lets you just use one resource. Okay? This is the eMath Toolkit. Again, same gear. This lets me open it. Notice that it's not letting me push these out anywhere. And it isn't letting me do that because students have access to it from where they are. So these are the kinds of things that make our resources easier to use. Did I close it? I'm so mad at myself when I do those things. I apologize. There we go. So these are the kinds of things I want you to play with. There's your second homework assignment. Please play with this so that you know what you own. So if I go, notice this, all resources. Remember, when I was in the student book, I just clicked on eHelp. But because I'm in the Teacher Center, I can get to anything. Look at this. These are all of the resources I might use in just that one lesson. Look at this. Chapter 1, Lesson 1. I have a check. I have 2 eHelps. I have 2 lesson presentations. More, which will be additional resources and tools like the reteaching. I have 14 response to interventions and differentiation. So that's the teacher that asked me the question about extensions. There you go. I have 1 tool, which is probably just something very specific to the lesson, like counters. I have 1 video I can watch. I have 8 worksheets. So all of those are right here. Each of these has the gear. So notice in this one, I can open it. I can see details about how to use it. I can assign this to my whole class or 1 child. I can share it. Or look at this. I can download this to my desktop. So if you're very worried about your internet connection, know that a majority of these things can indeed be downloaded. So I have 3 pages of resources for a single lesson. And I can go to this at any time. I'm going back to the hamburger menu, and I can click on resources, and I can get to this at any time for any lesson. Okay? So notice Chapter 1, Lesson 1. But when I click here, it opens every single chapter, every single lesson. I can go down to additional resources like response to intervention. These are fabulous new activities we just added. They're called Ignites. And here's your 3rd piece of homework. I invite you to look at those. They're a little activity you might do with students to get them excited about the mathematics. Maybe you won't see it in your teacher edition. As I said, we just added these in. So just remember you own them. You might want to make a note about that. Ignites are just little activities that jumpstart the mathematics. Okay? And then, of course, you're going to have every chapter. Those, and this is isolated by chapter. So it's going to let you go and get all of these materials at any one time. If you can't remember what you want, I know that sounds silly, but I actually mean that. Sometimes I go, gosh, she showed me that. What was it again? Put in a keyword search. And it will let you search for something. You could put in the word assessment. And this is just isolated for you that you have 196 presentations. You have 1,067 RTI opportunities. So this kind of springboards you into what you might look for. But if you find something good that you really think you'll go back and use, put it in your favorites. I've put in 8. These are things I just want to be sure that I don't forget I own them. So again, I'm just reminding you of the kinds of ways you can use this. I'm going to go back home, and I'm just going to remind you that when I was on this landing page, I was in the ebook, okay? One of the things I want to be sure to point out is plan and present. Now, plan and present will offer you all those pages at the beginning of a chapter that I showed you, and I said, oh, please don't skip these. This is everything that you have to get ready to teach the chapter, and you'll see on the right that we've shown them to you where you can get to them digitally. Notice here I can go to all the differentiation instruction. That's a part of my chapter. This is your chapter look, but I can also go into plan and present, in a lesson by lesson look as well. Be customized. I know you all are experienced educators, and I know you've done a lot of good things. Sometimes you want to add something into a chapter that you've done for years. Please don't think that we're asking you not to do that. Call that whatever you want to. You can call it XYZ and hit OK. It lets you add that lesson to the chapter wherever you want it to go. We want you to use your teaching expertise, and we don't want to take that away from you. This is allowing you to customize. So please go into plan and present, and please look at all the tools and things that you are offered. I want to go, I know I'm clicking fast, but I really want you to be able to see this presentation because I'm going to tell you about that customization too. This is Chapter 1, Lesson 1. I'm going to click on Presentation. Notice you have Launch and Customize. Why don't you try to use ours just as we built them? And then think about how you want to change it. Because this is very meaty. It's got your whole lesson, all 5 parts of your lesson already built in. So notice here, it's going to start with slide 1. But again, let's go back to food. Here's your waffle view. If you click down there on the waffle, here's your whole presentation built in the 5-part lesson, all the way to the wrap-up, and then here's all your differentiation. So it lets you see each slide. It lets you use it the way that you want to use it, but at the same time, it gives you an idea of what it is that you own. So just wanted to give you that. I did it again. I don't know why I keep doing it. I'm using too many buttons. That's it in a nutshell. Okay. So that's my lesson presentation from beginning to end. And I want to be sure that when I'm in the presentation itself, okay, I want to go back to that real quick. I keep opening so many windows. I apologize. But when I'm in the lesson presentation, whether you're in the classroom or working remotely, you can show this to the students. And again, it pulls you through every part of the lesson from slide to slide, okay? So this is, 1, and then I can move to 2. But also notice I have writing tools so that I can actually write on the slides. Notice here I'm at 100%. I can unzoom and do all those wonderful things that, make the presentation come alive with my students. Remind them of the essential question. And then, of course, as we move from slide to slide, you can do your actual instruction using your teacher's lesson guide. So these are the kinds of things that I want you to think about. Here's homework assignment number 4, is how do I want to use these slides? And then again, if I do use them, be sure that you realize that the slides are actually interactive. So the students are getting to interact with this. This is the problem of the day, and it really just, again, jumpstarts the mathematics. So, think about all the ways that you might use this potentially as a part of the instruction. So that's your presentation. Once you've gotten used to that, think about how you might customize one. If you found a YouTube video that you think is just fabulous, plug it in there. You can do that. If you have a handout that you have always used when you taught a concept, stick it in. The customization lets you do that. It lets you place it, and it lets you download it and install it on a slide in the presentation. So just want you to know you own it. All right, I'm going back here to my menu, and I want to be sure that I point out assessment. You can go to the online assessment or the print assessment. Online assessments are going to do what I constantly refer to as I was moving through my presentation with you, which was you can do this online, you can do this online over and over again. So when I get to the online assessment, I can assign it to my students, okay? So as you noticed here, I can go to assign from the test library. And here comes homework assignment number 5. I want you to go into the online assessment, and I want you to just look at what you own. Okay, you have an assessment for every single chapter, right? I can go to, and I can see what I've assigned. I can go to item banks, right? And eventually, I wouldn't suggest this right away, you can create your own test. But if you go to My Test, there it is, My Math, and then you can, of course, go to your grade level, or you can use some of the 21st century assignments. And these are additional tests. So once I go into those, all right, just want to be sure that you see here, go to your gear, and your gear is going to, do you want to copy it? Do you want to edit it? Do you want to assign it to your class? If you do, you click that, and it's assigned to everybody. Or you can pull up your class and only assign it to a few students who maybe were absent. You can preview it, you can print it. This is how you get to your online assessment. And I just wanted you to be sure that you saw those. What happens once a student takes a test? Well, all of the tests are auto-scored, and then they're going to move over to your data dashboard, which is right here. These are the reports that they will filter into. You have 5 different reports. Now, I'm going to make a suggestion as an experienced educator. Before you start, assigning tests and doing all that digitally, really get familiar with it. This is called a recommendations report. That's my favorite. I don't have a class in here right now, so it's not showing you any data. But what I love about a recommendations report is it will tell you what to do if a student is unsuccessful on the test. It will say, if a student missed item 1, 2, and 3, this is what their weekend, go back in the program and do this. So I like that one. You have an activity report. It too won't give you recommendations, but it gives you a clear view of what they are successful at. And again, I don't have a student in here. But when you do, it pops up and it shows you everything. So look at the reports you have. You have skills reports, progress reports, you have grade cards. You have 5 reports. So when they take an online assessment, it populates into every report. You can look at all of them, but I think probably the 2 you'll use the most are the activity and recommendation. But just making a suggestion there. Get comfortable with it. How are you going to develop a comfort level with it? Because you're going to go here. Comes another homework assignment. I'll give you a lot of homework. Go to professional development. And in professional development at McGraw Hill, we have built little videos for you and little PDFs of how to use everything I just showed you. Here's the data dashboard. Click on it, open it. It reminds you from beginning to end how to use it. Online assessments. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little videos or PDFs that you can use that will let you be reminded of how to use these tools. So don't think that this is it, that what Beth showed you today is it. I'm approaching the end of our time, and I will apologize in advance. If you have to leave, I completely understand. But as we exit our time together, I would be remiss if I did not go back into McGraw Hill and click on a student page. And I'm just going to do grade 1. Up, that's up. Didn't mean to do that. I'm going to go back. I would be remiss if I didn't show you. I'm still in the center. I apologize. I'm going to go to the grade 1 student center. I think it's very important for you to see what your students see when they open the online resource. Now look at that. Doesn't it look just like what you have? So remarkably similar. But I've touted our flexibility, and I've touted our ability to be consistent. So with the students see, they have a hamburger. Look at that. They can reach resources, the e-toolkit, assessment, homework. What I want to point out is here, I made mention of the assigning something to the student. When you assign something, it pops up here on the landing page. So the minute they open, they see that they have an assignment. Notice they have the tiles just like you. So when this one, they're in the chapter 1, Am I Ready? But if they go to chapter 1, lesson 1, they're going to see the tiles they need to get to their materials. Notice they have their ebook. It is the exact same ebook that you and I saw. So just wanted you to see the consistency. They can watch the video. And before I close, I invite you to write in the chat box. I'm going to click on e-tools because I want to be sure that you're using these. If you're teaching in your classroom or if you're teaching remotely, use these. I know concrete manipulatives are important to you, but there may come a day you can't use them with the students. So when you open this, this is what you see. We're in the student side, but you know what? This is what you see. Exactly. And you say, oh my goodness, doesn't look very good. Go down here, e-tools. This is the grade 1 alphabetical order, the manipulatives that you use with your students in alphabetical order, okay? But click the triangle and you can use any grade. So I wanted you to be sure that you knew you had that. Now we're in the student side. But if you've used this in your lesson, they know where to go to. So be sure to model it. I'm going to click on base 10 blocks just because I love them. We use them so much in first grade. And I'm just going to drag a flat over here. Now, if in the lesson I want to use 2 flats, I don't have to drag twice. I can actually go to this counter and it will let me, put 2. And if I do that and I drag, it will make 2 show up. So if we're using 300, I'm just so impatient. Okay. It all works. So I'm using this with my students. But maybe we're working on a lesson about decomposing. And it's very important that they understand how to decompose numbers. If I hit that hammer, I can demonstrate that 100, is actually 1010. So it lets me decompose the numbers. And by drawing a box around it, I can put it back together again. So they can understand the concept of compose and decompose, right? Now, I want to clear this. Yeah. So, get me off of here. If I go to this here, it's going to ask me, do you want to clear the screen? Yes, I did. So I can get rid of everything there and start a new problem. What I want to emphasize with you is demonstrate how you're using this with your students. If you use this in the lesson, they will know how to use it when they're at home. They can know how to use it with their parents. They can know how to use it when it's time to actually do the mathematics. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is that they do that. I want to be sure. Can you see this?
Yep.
Oh, good. All right. Here's my email one more time. And I'm putting up, now I get to this on Facebook. I believe you can get to it by simply putting .com. This is a website called Build Math Mind. It is not McGraw Hill. I'm not endorsing another product. What I have found that this is a great website for teachers like yourselves, for educators. It is worldwide. I see teachers on there from England, Australia, UAE. It's educators like yourselves sharing. And they may say, I've changed grade levels. I've moved from grade 5 to grade 1. Does anybody have a suggestion on how to group children? or someone may say, I was teaching place value today, and this was so valuable for me. Let me tell you what I did. And I find that educators, as I said, like us, we enjoy hearing these kinds of things. This is the kind of thing that is so beneficial. So again, here's another homework. I think this is number 7. When you're preparing to teach My Math, please go into the My Math resources we just looked at. Click on Professional Development in your hamburger menu and look at some of those videos that we prepared for you. And then if you went to a website like this, that I know some are not so great, I found this one to be extremely valuable, and they just did a virtual conference that was free, which is also videotaped, with math educators from around the globe. And those were fabulous. So just a suggestion, one educator to another. And I want to thank you all so much for the kind of time and attention that you've given me today. I hope this is beneficial. Don't hesitate to ask a question. I think you're wonderful. I really do. I know that we're facing difficult times, sometimes things that we were never prepared to do, but now we're doing them. So if you have any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I just want to say have a great year. Enjoy using your fabulous math program, and I look forward to hearing you via email. Any questions?
Thank you, Beth. That was really thorough. Thank you so much. We do have questions. There's a question. Do you have any available resources, worksheets, which can be used for students with learning difficulties or disabilities?
I would suggest looking, again, I'm going to target you to go online, and I'm going to suggest that you go online, open that menu in any grade level, and click on resources. It's going to take you to every response to intervention worksheet. And as you saw, there are over 1,000. So you might want to click on the tab that says keyword and put the specific need that you have, whether it be, a specific learning disability that targets writing or reading, and it will just filter those worksheets for you. I suggest trying to stay in the program as much as you can, because the format and design is so consistent. But you have thousands of worksheets that are in there, and I suggest going there first.
Thank you. I know you answered this earlier, but it's a repeat one. You mentioned about the 2 books and how many months do we have to space this out, in your opinion. Can you please answer that again?
Exactly.
I think
we
missed it.
You have 2 books. I think as an educator, one of the things that we tend to do, and I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody, I might be pointing at myself, is in the beginning of the year, I think we do what I call helicopter teaching, which is we hover over top of the lesson. And we just plug along, and we try to use everything that's offered to us. And I think the thing we need to do is remember that if you look at that table of contents, this is not the only time you're going to see this. We're going to bring it back. We're going to practice it in independent practice. We're going to bring it back, and we're going to look at it in other lessons in the chapter. So I think the number one thing to do is to not get so absorbed over a single lesson that we spend more than a day or so, 2 days tops. If you're spending 3 and 4 days in a lesson, you're never going to get through the entire program. So I'm really suggesting that you continue to pace yourself, use your resources, and think about what you could do with some of those students who seem to be struggling. Maybe isolate them in a small group and do some of those extension activities that are a part of the differentiation after part 4 in the lesson. But I think the key to it is remembering at the beginning of the year that you want to try to hit that volume 2 in January or February. And if you look at your individual grade level, you will see that very often the child's interact with volume 2 is not quite as long as volume 1. And one of the reasons is we didn't want to split volume 1 in the middle of a chapter. So you might find that volume 1 is a little longer than volume 2. So I'm targeting, late January, early February to move into volume 2. But
Thank
again,
you, Beth.
if you hit a snag, email me. I'll offer you some suggestions about what you might want to do.
Thank you, Beth. I know we're over time, so we'll just take one last question. Actually, we've got too many now. Okay. How can coordinators access the program to check on teachers' work?
I'm going to suggest that you talk to your sales rep about your ability to get an administrator account. Yeah, that's a very different kind of thing, you know, to have an administrator account. So talk to your sales representative about getting one of those.
You should have a master code holder in your school, and we just suggest that you speak to them and see how that works out between you guys. We'll just take one more. I haven't tried and found the worksheets for differentiation. Can you please repeat how to go to them if you want to download them? I'm kind of late, or maybe I missed that part. Thank you.
Oh no, I was going fast, so I'll take the blame for it. When you go into Connect Ed, okay, and you open in any lesson, any chapter, any lesson, and first of all, go to Connect Ed, open the menu, click on Resources. Alrighty. In Resources, it's going to have two drop menus. One is the chapter, the other is the lesson. When you click on that, it will automatically open that lesson, just that isolated lesson. And on the left side of the screen, it will say Response to Intervention. And it will show you all of your worksheets that are Response to Intervention. So that's just the fastest way to get to them. But when you isolate a lesson, Chapter 1, Lesson 2, Chapter 1, Lesson 3, when you go to Resources, it will always show you all of the worksheets for just that lesson right there. Click on the gear, and it will say Download. And I think in one of my homework assignments, I suggested you just play with it. And I promise you, you can't hurt it. Go in there and click around and find the way that you want to get to these things. But I use the drop menu a lot because it takes me there fast, for the fastest way. I hope that answered it.
Yeah, we hope that, and I guess that's all the questions we have for today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Beth, for your time.
Oh, I enjoyed it. I apologize for the 2 minutes we went over.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's important we cover all the questions that the audience has anyway, so I think that's good enough. Thank you so much for your time and covering everything for us. It's very thorough.
Yeah. Have a great week, you all.
Thank you. Some of you have asked about a pre-K webinar. So we do have a pre-K webinar that's next week. I've just dropped a link to all the back-to-school support and resources webinar series that we're running. The link is in the chat box. You can register for any of our webinars, as many as you'd like. You can get in touch with our social channels, which are on your screens right now, or drop us an email. The email's on your screen as well. And lastly, as my colleague Afsana mentioned during the start of the webinar, we will be sharing the recording of this webinar via email, and you'll also have the option to download the certificate of participation in the email that you will receive. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and have a great weekend. See you next time.